Our gospel reading this morning opens with the word when, which is a clue that we're jumping into a scene that is already in progress. A few verses earlier, at the beginning of chapter 14, the story in larger context is introduced in this way. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to share a meal in the home of one of the leaders of the Pharisees, they were watching him closely. Our response to this opening line should be, uh-oh. Jesus at a dinner party with Pharisees on the Sabbath. This is a major red flag that there are about to be fireworks. When we step back and look at the conflict stories between Jesus and the Pharisees as told in the Gospel of Luke, there have already been 3 occasions when the setting is at a meal, and 3 additional occasions when the central issue of the conflict is about actions that break the Sabbath. True to form, Jesus performs a healing at this dinner party and directly challenges the Pharisees about the lawfulness of this action, to which they cannot even respond. So that's the interaction that prompts Jesus to tell this parable that we're about to hear. The setting of the parable is a wedding feast or banquet, and they happen to be at a banquet. And I will say at the outset, this parable is very difficult for us to understand, not just because it was so long ago, but because of the cultural values of honor and shame that motivated first-century Judeans. 21st century Americans have virtually no concept of this system. We might have an intellectual grasp of honor and shame, but at our core, we really cannot understand it. This is because of our own values of rugged individualism and pulling ourselves up by our own bootstraps and our attitudes of doing whatever we want despite familial or social expectations. Don't like my attitude, my behavior, how I'm dressed? That's your problem, not mine. Fear of scorn from the collective or shame does not motivate us. So keep this in mind as Steve reads Luke 14, 7-14.
Good morning. Please stand if you're able to the reading of the Gospel of Luke. Thank you. Thanks for that introduction, Pastor Audrey. One Sabbath, when Jesus went to share a meal in the home of one of the leaders of the Pharisees, they were watching him closely. When Jesus noticed how the guests sought out the best seats on the table, he told them a parable. When someone invites you to a wedding celebration, don't take your seat in the place of honor. Someone might highly regarded than you could have been invited by your host. The host who invited both you and will come and say to you, give your seat to this other person. Embarrassed, you will take your seat to the least important place. Instead, when you receive an invitation, go and sit in the least important place. When your host approaches you, he will say, friend, move up here to a better seat. Then when you be honored in the presence of all your fellow guests, all who lift themselves up will be brought low, and all those who make themselves low will be lifted up. Then Jesus said to the person who had invited him, when you host a lunch or a dinner, don't invite your friends, your brothers and sisters, your relatives, or your rich neighbors. If you do, they will invite you in return, and that will be your reward. Instead, when you give a banquet, invite the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind, and you will be blessed because they can't repay you. Instead, you will be repaid. The just are resurrected. May this become God's word for us. Thanks be to God.
Thanks be to God.
You may be seated.
Thank you, Steve. Now, at first, Jesus seems to be giving advice about how to avoid shame and acquire more honor. He even seems to be paraphrasing Proverbs 25, 6-7, which says, "Don't exalt yourself in the presence of the king or stand in the place of important people, because it's better that he say to you, 'Come up here,' than to be demoted before a ruler." So far, there's nothing that is unexpected or inappropriate. At a banquet like this, there would be both higher and lower classes present. The host would invite their equals, people with whom they have reciprocal relationships. You know the type, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And there would also be people on the lower end of the social ladder present, people who were in something like a patron-client relationship with the host. These types of relationships were a strong feature of the ancient Roman Empire, in which Judea is located at this time. The patron could offer protection or resources to the client, while the client reciprocates with services, loyalty, or political support. So a socioeconomic range of guests would be present at such a banquet, necessitating careful negotiation of the seating arrangements. Again, none of this is a surprise. As I mulled over the difficulty that we have in understanding an honor-shame culture, the opening scene from the film Emma came to mind, specifically the 1996 version starring Gwyneth Paltrow. It's an adaptation of an early 19th century novel of the same name written by Jane Austen, who is known today for her commentary and critique of the British landed gentry. Emma falls into the genre of a comedy of manners, which, through humor, critiques the behavior of the upper class. Published in 1815, Emma is set in the Regency era of British history. According to Debrett's, who style themselves as the ultimate authority on the nation's tradition, society, and etiquette, the ideal behavior in the 19th century society was to be gracious and easygoing, a good listener who did not see the need to boast or seek out approbation, who in turn was adept at dispensing compliments and gentle flattery. There was also a general recognition that confidence, charm, and ease were signs of strength. We see this ideal demonstrated in the opening scene of the film adaptation of Emma that I just mentioned, where each of the first 6 exchanges includes a compliment.
Interest in the movement of armies, there lived a young woman who knew how this world should be run.
The most beautiful thing in the world is a match well made and a happy marriage to you both.
Oh, thank you, Emma. Your painting grows more accomplished every day.
You are very kind. But it would be all the better if I had practiced my drawing more, as you urged me.
It's very beautiful.
I should never take side against you, Miss Woodhouse, but your friend is right. It is indeed a job well done.
The job well done, Mr. Elton, was yours in performing the ceremony.
Each of the 6 exchanges is a compliment. You can see how these little compliments reinforce social ties and garner honor at each turn by performing according to the values of society. As a young woman of wealth and consequence, she presides over social gatherings which, like the setting in our parable, includes people from across the social spectrum. For example, when Mrs. and Miss Bates, an elderly woman and her spinster daughter, arrive at a gathering hosted by Emma, Miss Bates says repeatedly how obliged they are for being included. This is appropriate as they are significantly lower in the hierarchy than Emma, and they must pay due respects while acknowledging their own lower social position. Likewise, when discussing Mr. Martin, the romantic interest of her friend Harriet, Emma replies, "The Martins are the sort of people with whom I have nothing to do. A degree or two lower, and I might be useful to their families. But a farmer needs none of my help, and is therefore as much above my notice as he is below it." I could actually do it much more like Emma, but I refrained. This speech tells us so much. Aside from those who are her social equals, Emma is only interested in people if she can help them. Indeed, one might even say she's addicted to helping people. However, she is seriously misguided and only creates one disaster after another. But let's pause for a moment and go back to our parable. When we left off, Jesus had not yet said anything scandalous. He had seemingly given them advice about how to avoid shame and acquire more honor. Here is where he flips the script on them. Rather than inviting people who can pay you back, either your equals with the exchange of favors or those who are indebted to you through the patron-client relationships, invite those who cannot repay you: the poor, the crippled, the lame, and the blind. What is so striking to me, especially since the setting for this parable has included the healing of a man present at the dinner party, is that Jesus doesn't say anything about healing or changing the circumstances of those who should be invited. There's no healing them and then inviting them to join, or inviting them and then healing them. It's almost as if Jesus is saying to invite people just as they are, without trying to help them. I can imagine that this might sound strange to us. So what then are we to do? In my last homily a couple of weeks ago, I shared something that Bryce Miller said during a conversation at the delegate session during the Mennonite Church USA convention at the beginning of July. He's the pastor at Mennonite Church in Ritzville, Washington. I shared his observation that we are addicted to ministry that is altering the circumstance. But I didn't tell you the rest of what he said. Namely, that the alternative, he suggests, is presence. The reason I found this so incredibly profound is that Bryce lives with cerebral palsy. Many might see this as a barrier, not just for pastoral ministry, but for basic functioning in society. So his words about ministry as presence, without expecting or requiring or hoping for a change in circumstance, were especially impactful to me. Where then ought we to direct our attention and energy if we're not helping, fixing, or saving? It takes some effort, but we need to learn to prioritize seeing the systems that disable people rather than the help we think someone needs. For example, Drawn to Intellect says, use caution when describing barriers. Being Black is not a barrier for me. White supremacy is the barrier. Being female is not a barrier for me. Patriarchy is the barrier. Name the systems of power. These are the barriers. We must name these systems that create barriers and work to dismantle them. Like Jesus when he flips the script of the honor-shame system. It's shocking to me that Jesus doesn't mention healing for the people he urges his dining companions to include when they have a party. Perhaps because very often when we try to fix or help people, we aren't being truly present with them. We're treating them or their condition as a problem to be solved, rather than giving them the dignity to be as they are, rather than letting them be the ones to say what they need. Emma learns painfully that it's not just charity that matters, though it is important, but kindness. Real kindness values the dignity of others for their own sake, not just for the help she can give them so that she can fulfill her social obligations as a wealthy woman. May we learn the value and importance of ministries of presence and friendship that honors people for who they are. May we learn to identify the systems that disable people and actively work to dismantle the barriers that prevent people from coming to the table. May it be so. Amen.